All right, shalom, shalom, shalom. All praises to the Most High, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, which is to say in the Paleo Hebrew, Yahweh, which is the name of our Heavenly Father, meaning He is. That is who the world ignorantly calls God. Bahashem, which means in the name. Yahweh Shai, which means He is our salvation. And that is who the world also ignorantly calls Jesus, a so-called black man. All right? Now, what you see on your screen is a movie that just came out recently titled Him, okay? Which was a pretty good, decent movie, starring Marlon Wayans, who plays the quarterback Isaiah White, who's at the end of his contract, and they're trying to find his replacement. That you see underneath him in the movie, his name is Cameron Cade, okay? So long story short, the movie, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, don't, watch the rest of this lesson unless you don't mind hearing about it. But the person that you see on the bottom of the screen, Cameron Cade, is the up and coming, rising quarterback that's supposed to go number one overall in the draft. But due to an incident that took place while he was training, a deranged fan came and hit him from the back with some type of blunt object and caused a gash in his head that he had to go get surgery, and he wasn't able to perform in the combine so that they can get, his stock up higher, and he had to fall back, okay? So he didn't compete in the combine, and, his draft plummeted to where he didn't even, get introduced into the NFL lottery, okay? So his agent set up a meeting where he can go to Isaiah White, the world-renowned quarterback for the team Survivors, compound and train with him, and they supposed to pass him the torch, okay? That was the whole reason why they set this thing up, but Cameron Cade didn't know it, okay? But Isaiah White told him that, hey, I'm going to give you the keys to this team, at the end of this training facility, at the end of this training, okay? But amongst that, he finds out the outer and inner workings of this industry, okay? Cameron Cade, that is, all right? The light-skinned brother that you see Marlon Wayne's hands on top of his shoulders, all right? And make a long story short, he wasn't with it, okay? After seeing everything that he thought he wanted come to the realization he didn't, all right? Because he seen what it was required of him and asked of him to get this big-time contract deal, all right? Such as blood transfusions, okay? Now, whether or not this really goes on behind closed doors, I don't know. I can't tell you. I've never made it to that level, and been considered to be in the GOAT conversation, because this is basically what it was speaking on. GOAT, greatest of all time, all right? Marlon Wayans, Isaiah White, as he's known in the movie, was considered the GOAT, okay? And this up-and-coming star, Cameron Cade, was supposed to be his replacement, all right? Sort of like what? This right here, Michael Jordan and LeBron, okay? These two are in the conversation endlessly, whether it's sports stations or your barbershop or whoever, who's the GOAT, which is an acronym for greatest of all time, all right? But if you look on it past that, it's speaking on what? Rituals, all right? Because a GOAT is a sin offering, all right? That's why they say an scapegoat, all right? And that's prevalent to the quote that was stated by Cameron Cade, the brother right there that Marlon Wayans has his hands on, who says, what is the opposite of a survivor, all right? And Marlon Wayans, no, Slaki, he said, what is the opposite of a savior, all right? Because that was the name of the football team, Saviors. And Marlon Wayans said a killer. And he said, no, a mascot, all right? Showing you that these elites, these NFL owners, they only look at their cash cows as mascots for their organizations, okay? Because although you have a LeBron James, a Michael Jordan, a Kobe Bryant, even a Tom Brady, all right? All these individuals that's in the GOAT conversation, they're just mascots, all right? Mascots, that's it, okay? Used to be trotted out to make money for these organizations and then be washed up, okay? Same thing, man. All right, same thing happened in this movie. Cameron Cay was Isaiah White, played by Marlon Wayans, was entering his last year of his contract, and they were looking to replace him. And at the end, Cameron Cay, the light-skinned brother, and Marlon Wayans had to duke it out. Who would become the GOAT? All right, the or the future quarterback of the Saviors franchise. All right. And long story short, Cameron Cay came out on top and went to sign the contract on the football field where all the owners were at. And his last task was he had to cut someone's head off, if I'm not mistaken. And he didn't want to do it because he didn't want that contract. Only to come to find out they had been grooming him from the beginning since he was a child. All right. And one could even believe that they had something to do with his father's demise, being unalive, to push him or to propel him further into chasing after that dream. Okay, because that's a lot of these owners do, man. They search out, up and coming athletes that don't have male figures in their life. All right, those are the easier ones to target. Okay, so you see individuals like a LeBron who was raised by his mother, man. All right, that's a good, individual to prop up and to set up as a GOAT, okay? Amongst him having talent, but it's pretty much the aspects of how do they want to market this person, okay? All right, yeah, he has talent, but he also has marketability, okay? Single mom, raising her son from Akron, Ohio, and all this, man. So these GOAT debates and everything else, it was covered pretty much in this movie, Him. And it was a pretty decent movie, okay? If you look at it for what it was, all right? It was a ritual from passing of the torch from one person that was the GOAT, Isaiah White, to the up-and-coming GOAT, Cameron Cay, okay? Same thing we see right here. The GOAT that people looked at as Michael Jordan, and the next up-and-coming GOAT, LeBron James. Now, do these rituals take place like they do in the movies? I couldn't tell you that, okay? I could not tell you that, but I wouldn't put it past these, these athletes, these entertainers in general, okay? Because there's no telling what they'll do, all right? No telling what they'll do to secure the quote-unquote bag, all right? So that was a pretty good movie, Him, seen it for what it was, a inside look on the outer workings of these industries, these entertainer industries, not just the athlete world, but the music world as well. All right, because all these people give up sacrifices in some way, shape, or form, whether willingly or unwillingly, all right? And it's all based on left-hand side magic, okay? Because why? They're learning the tricks and trades of these wicked elites, all right? You think P. Diddy learned about all that freak off on his own? No, he had to get groomed, okay? He had to be groomed into that, all right? The same thing with the GOAT conversation, okay? LeBron is just not going to acquire, a basketball team or anything else without being groomed and given the outs and ins on how things work. You think Michael Jordan acquired, Nike and all his assets that he has without, understanding the outs and ins and making that sacrifice? All right, because we know what happened to his pops, okay? Look at Magic Johnson. You think he became a billionaire, by hard work? No, Okay, it all requires a sacrifice. What was his sacrifice? His son. All right, look at his son now. All right, a flaming you know what. All right, so the sacrifices is there, whether they understand or whether they accept it or not. They have to give up something. Okay, so it's going to be no different when it's time for LeBron. Okay, because LeBron has acquired a lot, and they have kept him squeaky clean for the most part. Okay, so who knows what goes on behind closed doors. All right, and that's what this movie entail. All right, him. All right, because why? The movie was basically greatest of all time. Okay, played by Marlon Wayans, Isaiah White, the GOAT of the quarterback, and this up and coming player Cameron Cade, who's supposed to be replacing him as the GOAT. Okay, so it was a pretty good movie to see, and yeah, I enjoyed it for what it was. All right, so let's get a few precepts. All right, this is the book of Proverbs, chapter 6 and verse 13. It reads, He winketh with his eyes, he speaketh with his feet, he teacheth with his fingers. See? And understanding the outer works of this industry, you have to know it's heavily rooted in masonry, all right? Masonic, all right? These individuals, your Jay-Z's, your even Nas for that point, P. Diddy, LeBron James, even Michael Jordan. All these people, Kobe Bryant, you see the sacrifice they used him. All these people, they understand they make the Masonic codes, all right? Masonaries, all right? What you would call them, all right? Even though Kobe Bryant and LeBron James didn't go to college to pick up on it, they were taught throughout the industry, all right? They weren't excelled to that level without knowing the Masonic codes, okay? That's why you see the handshakes, all right? LeBron James got a handshake for just about every teammate, including his son, on the Lakers. And he had it with the Cavaliers, and he had it with the Miami Heat, all right? These are things they pick up, all right? These are things that they were taught. These are the things that they put right in front of our eyes, but we don't see it on TVs and commercials, all right? But it's not meant for us to see it because why? We weren't taught these codes, these Masonic codes, all right? And this is pretty much what the movie Him was alluding to or hinting to, all right? Because they had Marlon Wayne, the quote-unquote GOAT quarterback, getting blood transfusions from these elites, all right? They were putting their blood inside of him. All right. And Cameron Cade came into the room and caught him doing that. And he was asking, what is that he's doing? He said he's getting a blood transfusion. All right. It's needed to put fresh oxygen into your blood. All right. Showing you, there's a certain level of sacrifice that you have to make when you ascend to that level. All right. You have to compromise or give up your moral beliefs. Okay. And that's why Isaiah White, played by Marlon Wayans, asked him, what are you willing to sacrifice? And Cameron Cade, the light-skinned fellow, said everything, all right? And that's your mindset. And if you want to be transcendent and put into that GOAT category, you have to give up everything. Because look what happened to Tom Brady, all right? He was, kissing his son in the lips on one of those documents, okay? So you don't have no say-so in the matter, all right? Once you accept that contract, that big, because everybody get the first contract, the lure you in, the hook you, and then they come give you that big time contract, that 6-year, $300 million contract, all right? That's your grooming stage. They're going to prep you now, all right? Because you're not going to tell them, no, you don't want to do this commercial, or you don't want to do that. You feel obligated with that $300 million contract. You feel obligated, okay? Hey, we need you to do this commercial, about this and that right here. You ain't gonna tell them no. See, they don't reel you in with that big time lure. You don't bid on it, okay? Because in your contract, you obligated to do whatever it is they ask for you because that's why your agent is there. He's part of the grooming stage. He or she It's there to confirm and to, tell you that there's nothing that you have to worry about. This is a big time contract. This is enough to set you and your family up for the rest of their lives. All right. Generational wealth, $300 million. And these, elites, these wicked elites, money to them ain't shit, man. Okay. They know how to move around money. They know how to sell off assets. They know how to do bankruptcy and put their business in other names and things of that magnitude. So to sign off you for a $300 million contract, it's nothing to them. That's a write-off to them. All right. They know their organization is worth billions. And they know the cachet and pull that a young individual like yourself can have on their intended audience or target, which is the mass, the people. They're willing to give you that $300 million contract because in the end, they're going to recoup that plus more. All right. So it says, he winketh with his eyes. He speaketh with his feet. He teacheth with his fingers. All right. These are all Masonic, signals. All right. So these, especially these ones that's been catapulted up into the GOAT conversation, they've understood what they've gotten into. All right. But see, it's that love of money, okay? It's that $300 million contract. It's that I can be a billionaire. I can own my own team, okay? All I got to do is do what? A few commercials. Okay, yeah, I'll do them, okay? See, there's no integrity once you make it to that level, okay? You willing to sell your soul for anything, all right? Let's read that. Mark 8:36. It says, for which shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul, right? Because in some way, shape, or form, a piece of your soul has been removed from you. That innocence that you had before entering into this world, this industry, they take that from you, okay? Whether you know it or not, they take it, okay? And they replace it with millions upon millions of dollars. And you, in your mind, rationalize it as, I got generational wealth. My family's going to be taken care of, all right? All I had to do was a commercial, Let me do a commercial about supporting, the LGBT alphabet community. Let me do a commercial about something else. I don't believe it, but I don't care. I'm getting paid. Never mind the people that look up to you and see you doing it, so they think, man, that must be okay. All right, see? So it says, for which shall it profit a man if he should gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? You see? So here it is, here you got a commercial, you promoting this alcoholic, cognac, whatever beverage, and to you, it ain't nothing. Hey, you don't drink it, but you don't care about who follows you if they drink it or not, because you got a big check at the end of the day. All right. All you know is I'm here to promote this product, man. Not knowing that you yourself is the product, the mascot, all right, of what? These people's organization, all right? They can't put their face out there because nobody would buy it, man. Nobody would care what some old-time white person, so-called white person, is selling. But hey, let's get a LeBron, let's get a Michael Jordan, let's get, a Tank Davis. Let's get someone that's got, pull with the youth, specifically the so-called Black, Latino, and Native American community. All right. Let's get one of them to push this. We can definitely, ruin the community. All right. And this is what they do, man. All right. This is what they do. And our people, they've bought it hook, line, and sinker, man. Because why? They lay down on the table this big contract. And, they agents tell them, hey, man, we can't get nothing better than this. Okay. You see? Shaq took that contract, came out to LA, that big time contract. What did they do? Got him in a dress. Okay. TNT, Charles Barkley, put him in a dress. Okay. See, when you play ball according to their rules, they can put you in better positions. Okay. Here it is. Shaq and Charles Barkley got put on the dress, and what happened? They got promoted. They got spots on TNT. Uh, you know this. You know the show with Ernie and Kenny. Kenny the Jet Smith, Charles Barkley, and Shaq. All right, they put on a dress. All right, get roles in movies. You see, this is the industry. All right, this is what the industry is comprised of. All right, and hey, I don't want to say it's sad, but it's sad. Our people are willing to sell themselves short. All right, which is why it's not going to be to no surprise when this Charagma, this RFID microchip is rolled out. You're going to be seeing, damn, they support Yale, okay, because it's all within their contracts. Little do they know, when they signed that big deal contract, that's what it entitled. They do public shows, they do public venues, they do everything. They have to do these signings. They don't want to, they obligated to. All right, and if they don't, they're gonna recoup that money one way or another, man. All right, whether they take the assets, whether they take someone's life, okay. Allegedly, all right? And this is the outer workings of this industry, all right? Why? Because it's heavily rooted in satanic, all right? Paganistic rituals. So it says, or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? See? You're going to have to give up something in order to make it in this man's society, his kingdom. It says, whosoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him also shall the Son of Man be ashamed when he cometh in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. See, these people ain't going to be right with the Lord, because how can they? Okay, they deny him. All right, they denied our power and his only begotten Son. Why? For the sake of this money, this bag, the love of money. For the love of money. I believe that's that Bone Thugs and Harmony, man. For the love of money, man. All right, they'll sell their own mama, man. All right. Are they own pops for that? Okay. So, hey, it's real. That GOAT, greatest of all time, BS, man, that's real, man. That sacrifice. That's what the GOAT really is speaking of, that Baphomet. All right. They just putting an acronym and throwing you, the casual viewer, off by, chasing a conversation that don't got nothing to do with the greatest of all time. It's really about who's going to sacrifice the most. Okay. And right now, it looks like LeBron James is coming up on MJ, okay? All MJ really has is those shoes, man. Those shoes is what's keeping him in the GOAT conversation, all right? Now, LeBron James is trying to close in, trying to get him a basketball team, a soccer team, and so on and so forth, all right? So it's looking like it's evident that he's willing to play ball, okay? So we're going to see which one of these athletes / entertainers, once they roll out this RFID microchip, is ready to really be crowned the GOAT, okay? The greatest of all time, because that's going to be their last, inclusion, is to push this microchip to the mass, to get them chipped, okay? And they're going to have to sacrifice their body, because why? They're going to more than likely have to show themselves getting chipped on national TV, okay? To push this agenda, along with your pastors and your preachers, okay? All of them are in on it all together, and you're gonna come to the realization, but for the most, it's gonna be too late. This is 1 Timothy, chapter 6, and verse 6. But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and it's certain we can carry nothing out. See, this is what these entertainers and these athletes don't understand, okay? Because they don't believe that this world, this man's kingdom, is going to end. It says, and having food and raiment, let us be there with content. See, most of these athletes, they don't get it, man. That first contract that you get is the best you're going to get. Although it isn't giving you the numbers that you want, that generational wealth, you're not bound to this industry. Okay, that's just your introduction level. Okay, they give you that 200,000, or if you're a number one pick, they may give you, 6 million for your first year or your first 2 or 3 years, and then once that's up, they renegotiate, they restructure, and then that's when they give you that mid to big time, contract. All right, but most of our people don't understand that's the switching bait. All right, they tell you, man, once you get that first contract, it ain't nothing but $1 million. Because what was Cam was on that podcast with Ryan Clark, Shannon Crowder, and Fred Taylor, and he asked them what's the most they ever made, and each one of them went down the line, and Cam at the end said, well, I made 20 million or something along that line with my first check, and I believe 12 million was guaranteed. Well, that was the check you should have rolled off into the sunset with. All right, but see, they hooked you, they got you, and then next thing you know, you at their disposal, man. All right, they could put you, they can control the narrative in the media how they want you to be portrayed. All right, Cam is a quitter. All right, Cam doesn't do. And next thing you know, you out of the league, man. And you don't know it's because you said something that didn't sit right with the agenda. All right, you spoke on something that just look what happened to Kyrie Irving, man. All right, posting that Hebrew to Negroes reposts on social media platforms that got him banned, man. All right. But see, now he's willing to play ball. All right. Now he's what? He's put back in the public eye as, someone who redeemed himself. Okay. Now look, they done blew all that under the carpet, man. Nobody even thinks about that anymore. All right. So it's all how much you're willing to play ball. Okay. If you're willing to play ball and get on board with the program, everything goes according to plan. But if you get off and you think that you're going to be a quote unquote free slave out of their plantation, that's when they'll reel your ass back in, man. Okay. Sit you down, talk to you. And if you don't want to get on board, they got a smear campaign. Okay. They're going to make you look bad in the eye of the public opinion. Okay. And we seen that. All right. That's why this truth isn't, meant for those with great notoriety, because they're not willing to give it up. Okay. Just look, Kyrie, Ice Cube. He was talking about being a Hebrew Israelite, and he no longer talks about that no more. Because why? He wanted to push that Big 3 league. They ain't going to give him that, talking about that Hebrew Israelite madness. Okay. Who else? Nick Cannon had to give an apology and go get educated. Who else? I believe Deshaun, what's his name? The wide receiver that played for the Eagles. Deshaun Jackson spoke about being a Hebrew Israelite. They took him out. Okay. You can't be in this truth and publicly announce it, and don't think if you got notoriety, and especially if you are a well-renowned athlete or entertainer, and think they're not going to do anything about it, man. They're going to hit you, all right? They're going to hit you where it counts, in your pockets, all right? They're going to take everything from you, all right? And if you don't want to get re-educated, you're going to be wiped and swiped and brushed off into the wind, all right? And they know you got obligations, okay? You're going to go bankrupt, all right? See? And that's what the people don't understand, man. They come into this industry. This is a dog-eat-dog world industry, man. They see that first contract, and it's enough to get them to, want to reconsider of signing a second contract and a third contract. And that's when that big contract come in. They give them that, hey, this is a $6,253 million contract, all right? But now when you sign this, you got an obligation. You got to speak. You got advertisements we got you to do, because these organizations, they set up, man. All right. Nike is complicit with the NBA. Okay. I'm not sure if it's got to deal with the NFL, but I know it's got to deal with the NBA. All right. Along with other advertisements. That's why you see them on these basketball players' jerseys, man. Okay. That's why these basketball players, they can't wear certain brands, okay? Because they're not approved by the NBA, all right? Because Nike is, for the most part, the brand of the NBA, okay? So unless they pay a fine, they can't wear their own brand or other brands at that. So the industry, it goes deep, it runs deep, man. All right. And a lot of these individuals, they don't know what they're getting into. All right. And by the time they do, it's too late. They got to finish out their obligation. All right. Or risk losing it all. They don't got the lawyers that these big time corporations got that can bankrupt them, that can take their houses. You see? They have them ended up they'll have them ended up looking like Delonte West, man, or Steve Francis, okay? Out on the streets. Not even recognizable, okay? This is a cruel industry. That's why, hey, we thank the Lord that he called us from out of that, because a lot of us brothers, we had aspirations of, being an NBA or NFL or something to do with the industry, okay? But the Lord said, no, not so, because I knew if I give you over to this industry, that would be it. So the Lord, he kept us for this very specific reason, so that we can be preaching and prophesying in his name, all right? Without no compromisable and being put in compromisable positions, okay? So it says, having food and raiment, let us be there with content. But they that will be rich fall into temptations, in a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. See? So these, one thing you got to know about Esau Edom, man, these elites, they at the top of their game, man, okay? They shake your hand, they smile at you, they think to themselves, man, this is going to be a nice specimen right here. We can really make a good, killing off of this person, per se, meaning they can make some real-time money off of this person. All right, especially if they've been following you since you was in these AAUs. All right, this is all a showcase, man. Just like back then in the day, I don't know if y'all ever watched Star Search with Ed McMahon. He was who? He was one of the gatekeepers, okay? That's how he came across talents like Britney Spears, all right? So these introductory type level AAUs, and so on and so forth, these are talent searches for the next up and coming individual who they can groom, man. All American McDonald games, okay? They get a feel for what type of person or what type of cachet this individual has, all right? That's why they have what you call scouts that go to these games. They're not coming and look at these players for their talent. They're coming and look and see what type of influence they have, okay? These scouts, these are just individuals that come to these games so that they don't be looked at as creeps, Why is a 50-something-year-old man coming to a high school football game? Oh, that's a scout. Okay, then they go introduce you. Hey, I'm such and such from such and such, and you say this is my son. And they've already getting their foot in the door, man. You see, the industry, is cutthroat, man. Okay. These elites, they're not gonna come out there to these high school football games. You're not gonna see no 70-year-old man out there in the stand. He's gonna look awkward. All right, so they send scouts. Okay. This is how they did it back then. I don't know how they're doing it today, okay? But it would get talk. Talk will be, you will hear talk around the way. Oh yeah, they got a scout coming out from the University of Florida to this football game tonight, for such and such and such and such. Okay, these are all introductory levels to the craft. All right, he teacheth with his hands. He speaketh with his feet. All right. They're all esoteric, all right? They're all esoteric, all right? They do things in secretive and code, okay? It says, but they, verse 9, that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. Verse 10, this is what gets them all. For the love of money is the root of all evil. See, they get that first hit of that contract. Some of them get millions, some of them get hundreds of thousands. That's enough to be taken care of. All right. If you know how to spend your money and you don't, waste it on jewelry, because it's all a game, man. All right. The jewelry industry is in on it. Okay. Like what's a famous jewelry industry jewelry company? Jacobs. They all in on it, man. Here, let me open up this showcase and show you these diamonds and let you see $100,000, $200,000 Jacob watch, and man, all of this, they all in it on all together. It says, for the love of money is the root of all evil. So they get that check, they get that fame, they be put into these situations where they can meet, these females. All of this, it's all set up, man. All right, it's all set up. Okay, that was another part of the movie Him. Okay, when Marlon Wayne, who played Isaiah White in the movie, tries to get Cameron Cade, to be introduced to other women, and Cameron Cade says, "I already got a girlfriend back home," and Marlon says, "Man, let me tell you something. If you're not willing to F another chick because you worried about her feelings, you're not ready for this game, man." See? That was all him trying to get him to compromise, all right? All right, he even said, you can F my chick, all right? Which his chick was part of the game too, all right? Because she was what you would call a handler, all right? She would be the one that introduced these players to the big wigs, all right? These owners, okay? So you got handlers in the game, okay? And people don't, and these sports athletes, they don't know that. See, this is why it's pertinent to us to be in this truth, man. Because we see it for what it is, okay? A wicked industry, all right? And by the time these athletes and these entertainers find out, it's too late. They got too much obligations, all right? They can't turn back. They can't say they don't want to do it, because if they do, they're going to strip them from all they have, and they're going to leave them with a stain on their name. So they say, okay, we'll go ahead and play ball. All right. We'll get on board. We'll promote whatever it is you want us to promote, and so on and so forth. It says let me go back up from the top again. Verse 10, for the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith. See, and this is why the Lord didn't allow us to get to that position, because he know that we could have erred from the faith. And then what? We'd have just been into the world. 2/3 ninja that got it all, man. That's a billionaire. That's got football, basketball, Grammys, awards, so on and so forth. And denying the truth, man. Okay? We see it happen all so often, man. How many well-renowned entertainers, Denzel Washingtons, you name it, are out there on the highway and hedges preaching, man? You ain't gonna find any, okay? If you do, they're not well-renowned, okay? I'm not saying that you can't be wealthy in this truth, but you can't be famous and still be relevant and be out here preaching this truth. They ain't gonna let it happen, okay? It says they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows, right? Because after they get that contract and they find out what it's all about, they feel, damn, man. But they get over it, man. Okay? These wicked elites, they got a way of getting, these wicked elites, these Edomites, they got a way of making you forget about everything that you thought you had decent about yourself. Okay? Hey, man, send them a few girls. Hey, send them a watch. Send them something. We'll make him forget about anything decent that he thought he had about himself or herself. Send him something and they'll make him forget. Send him what room he in. Send 6 of our hottest cheerleaders up there to room such and such, man. And Jake, he ain't thinking too much far. See, that's the problem. Jake don't think too far ahead, man. We all at one point in time was that way. We just saw what was in front of us, okay? We thought we was the man, all right? And this damn devil, he knows that he plays on our ego, all right? Ego is what's the downfall of man, that proud, man. Oh yeah, I'm the man. See, I got females flocking to me. I got deals coming left to right. This is all part of the dance, man. Okay? This is all part of the dance. All right? The devil, he don't care about any of that, man. He just wants you. All right? Because he knows what you can do for his organization, his company. All right? That's why Cameron Cade told Marlon Wayne, what's the opposite of a savior? And Marlon Wayne said killer. And he said, no, it's a mascot, because that's all these entertainers, athletes, whatever you want to call them, are entertainers. All right. They get, handsomely paid, albeit, they get handsomely rewarded. Okay. And some say, well, I'll be a mascot for that, for $25 million. Because look at Steve Harvey. What did Steve Harvey say? He said, I'll be a monkey for $100 million. You see? Our people don't got no shame in their game, man. Okay? Because why? They feel like they've been so, heavily oppressed for so long that they willing to sell their soul short for whatever it is, for this time being on earth. All right? But not knowing, man, this is the last go around. All right? They going to sell their soul short and take that Karagman, and that's going to be it, man. All right, they're going to get destroyed in the lake of fire, and then they'll be brought back into the kingdom in their right mind. So it says, verse 11, but thou, O man of the Most High, flee these things, and follow after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, meekness. Fight the good fight of faith, lay hold of eternal life, whereunto thou art also called, and has professed a good profession before many witnesses. See, this is our profession, man. All right, this faith, okay? And we pray and thank the Lord, the water Yahweh, for keeping us, all right? Not having us to be compromised, not putting us in those compromisable positions, okay? That we can fight the good fight of faith, and endure to the end if it be the Lord's will, all right? So we thank the Lord, all the time after waking up to this truth, man, okay? Because, hey, it tells you, for many are called, but few are chosen. Not too many, what does it say? Not too many nobles are called to this, okay? So not too many people of notoriety are called to this. Let's see if we can get that. I believe it's in 1 Corinthians. See if I can put a few words in it to bring it up. We're going to go to 1 Corinthians. One and 26. This is 1 Corinthians 1 and 26. It says, for ye see your calling, brethren, how that not many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. See? So the Lord isn't dealing with, those that have a name. All right. Those that are so-called, quote unquote, self-made this and self-made that. All right. Because their ego, their pride won't allow them to come to this truth, man. All right. So we thank the Lord that he kept us humble and meek in order to receive this truth. All right. So it says, for you see your calling, brethren, how that not many wise men after the flesh. That's the key thing. After the flesh, this world. All right. Because you can make it in this world. All right. But just because you made it in this world don't mean that the Lord is going to call you. It says, not too many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. See? So you can be the goat all you want to in this man's kingdom. All right? And that's all you fighting for is the GOAT, which it really should be the greatest of all time mascots. All right? So you can have that crown here in this world because it ain't going to mean nothing in a little bit. Okay? So you get crowned GOAT. So what? All right? You finna be destroyed right along with the other people because why? That GOAT is just a sin sacrifice. All right? So the Lord ain't dealing with the wise of the flesh. or the mighty or the noble. All right. He's dealing with the humble, the meek. All right. The elect. Okay. So let's go ahead and close out 1 Peter 5 and 8. This is the book of 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 8. It reads, be sober, be vigilant. Why? Because your adversary, the devil, you know, the so-called white man, the word devil just goes into deceiving, man. And he deceives our people all the time by what? That snare, that trap, that bait, that check, that money, eventually that charagma. It says, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. See? This is why we're honored to have the Lord fighting on our side to keep us from that snare, that fowler, that trap, that check, and eventually that charagma, that mark of the beast, that RFID microchip. All right? So we got to continue to be sober and continue to do the work and not be idle. All right? And be vigilant. Continue to watch. Okay? Because if not, we can easily, you know, be allured or be lured to, you know, the ways of this damn devil. All right. So keep fighting a good fight and enduring to the end if it be the Lord willing. We're going to be taken care of. Okay. So with that being said, pray some more of us edified through this lesson. And until the next time, if it be the Lord's will, stay strong, stay in the faith. We're almost home. Shalom. Peace.